Be Devarim, Deuteronomy, the 11th chapter. We're going to start with verse 26. It starts off with the idea of, I set before you this day a blessing and curse. Blessing if you accept the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you this day, and curses if you do not accept the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside from the path that I command you this day to go after the idols of the nations whom you have not known. Let's stop there for a second. I have another set of glasses, my round ones, on my desk. Can you get them for me? When we read this text, it does not seem to promote a middle ground, does it? Does it in any way promote mediocrity? Being that you have one choice and you must make it. One is blessing, two is curse. Now, with that being said, I want to go back to something that actually Tom and I were talking about before class, and something that we spoke about the other day. We talked about this concept of how does God interact, or how does He conduct Himself in our affairs when we do good or bad. Remember this, we were talking about anthropomorphic. You know what anthropomorphic means? It means giving human qualities to the Creator, which we know there are no human qualities to the Creator in the sense that we cannot describe Him in human terms because He doesn't have human emotions. So when we say God is angry or God is jealous, that is our way of describing something that we really don't understand. He's much higher, much more pure than any of those things. So when we say God is merciful, in our mind we have an idea of what a merciful human being would be, but in no way can we understand the mercy, the purest level of mercy that the Creator provides, right? So with that being said, when you say, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse, does this mean, oh, Toby's done a good job, I bless him today? Or Toby did a bad job and I'm going to curse him today? You see, the problem with that is now it looks like we have a Creator that acts like a capricious man that says, I'm going to bless you or curse you based on whether you please me or not. But the Creator is far beyond that, far above that. And for us to get to understand this better, I used an illustration a week or two ago. I don't know, it may have been Thursday when we talked about energy, the Creator and energy. I can't remember. The best way to describe blessing and curse in our life is this. We all have electricity in our house. We can't really see it. We all know that we have the benefit of the electricity. And how do we know that? Because we can plug an appliance into it and it performs according to the appliance design. The Creator is pure energy in essence in creation. How do we know that there's a Creator? We can look at the nature around us. We can see how nature was designed itself, chapter 11, verse 26, 27. We can see how the Creator, we can see the Creator in nature itself, right? So we can look at the beautiful mountains, etc., etc. So you can actually see the results of creation itself that's plugged into God, and it's doing its purpose, right? Dogs do its purpose, cats does its purpose, cows do its purpose. When it comes to us humans, when we actually begin to plug into the essence of the Creator, we begin to reflect that which is pure and just and holy because we're plugging into the essence of the Creator. Just like electricity, if I plug into a circuit somewhere, an appliance, then that appliance is going to perform according to what it was designed to perform, correct? If I am plugged into the Creator, then I will begin to perform as God has created me to be. That's why we all encourage everybody to be yourself. Don't try to be a toaster trying to be a refrigerator doesn't work. It's So everybody must try to be themselves. However, let's talk about the negative effects or electricity being misapplied. What happens if your child goes into a socket and puts a hairpin? It's a nasty shock, right? Right? So are they putting that hairpin as it's designed to go into the plug? And what is it? They get a shock. Pennies, anything, right? Yes, it will. So, or a screwdriver, as I did when I was a kid. So, when you do that, do you say, oh, horrible electricity, look what it did to me? Now, a child might say that, but an adult would say, no, you did that to yourself because you stuck something into it that wasn't supposed to be in it. This is the example of Nadab and Abihu, the two sons of Aaron, who went in and decided to bring strange fire in and were struck dead. They wanted to misapply something very holy and ended up receiving the punishment. Did God seek them out to destroy them, or did the whole plan fall because they made the wrong decision? The plan failed because they made the wrong decision. I have electricity in the house and I want to make sure it functions fully, but are you guys familiar with the ground system in a house? I don't know if you're familiar, but they have a big old copper rod down in the ground and the power is connected to it. If that ground is off, you don't have a proper ground in the house, it'll literally cause your appliances to fail early. It'll cause all kinds of problems in your home. So think about this. The divine presence is equal to the power or energy that is in your home. If you do anything that interrupts the flow of that essence or the power like you would the power in your house, you are creating an environment in which failure is going to take place. You follow? And if that's the case, this is what we're talking about when it comes to blessing and curse. If you do what is right and you make the right decision, you receive blessing. If you don't, you receive curse. Why? Because it's all set in the cosmos, it's all set in creation, and it's set in nature. And that, my friend, is to help us to understand why it's so important to begin to do tshuva, because tshuva actually repairs the situation. It actually goes out to the ground system and properly grounds the power in your house so that it has a flow of divine presence. Now, what did he commanded them to do? He said, and cursed if you do not accept the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside from the path that I commanded you this day to go after idols of the nation whom you have not known. When the Lord your God shall bring you into the land that you are about to enter to possess it, you must place those who bless on Mount Gerizim and those who curse on Mount Ebal, and they not on the other side of the Jordan after the way of the setting of the sun, which is the land of the Canaanites who dwell in the plain opposite of Gilgal, besides the plain of Moreh. For you will cross the Jordan to enter and possess the land that the Lord your God has given you. You will possess it and settle it. Take care to observe all the laws and the ordinances that I've set before you this day. He goes on to tell them to observe the laws and ordinances, and then to utterly destroy all the sites in which the nations are to that you are to dispossess, worship their idols on lofty mountains, on hills, under any luxuriant tree. You must tear down the altars, smash the pillars, put their esherim or their sacred poles or trees to the fire, and cut down the images of their idols, obliterate their name from the site. Do not do so before the Lord your God, but only to the site that the Lord your God will choose amidst your tribes. Now, there's this text here in verse 4. Somebody read from the Chumash for me in verse 4. No, just that verse.
You shall not do this to Hashem your God.
In verse 5, go ahead.
Rather, only the place that Hashem your God will choose from among all your tribes to place his name there, shall you seek out his presence and come there.
Okay, so the term "you shall You shall settle the site or worship God in the site that he chooses is a very important term. What site is he talking about? Where the temple's at, correct? Now, why did he mention Mount Gerizim and not the Temple Mount? Why didn't he specifically talk about the Temple Mount? Well, there's actually kind of a debate among the sages as to why there was no specific naming of the Temple Mount. As a matter of fact, there is not one single time that that place is mentioned, that's where God's going to put his name, until it was time to put his name there, right? When David Amelech purchased it, remember when he purchased the field, right? So
Hebrew always says Hamakom, the place.
The place, correct. Hamakom is the place. So the idea, why is the place not mentioned? And I find it really interesting. You had something you want to bring up?
Well, if you tell everybody where you're going, they're going to get there first.
Very good. Thanks for taking all the wind out of my sails. I have nothing to say now, so we'll go home. No, that's all right. No, absolutely right. Today is the testimony as to why this is so important. Who occupies the Temple Mount right now? The Muslims occupy the Temple Mount. Why?
Cousins.
Huh?
Cousins.
Cousins, yeah. Evil cousins. But why do they do it? Because that belongs to the Jews and they want it. Right? And if they would announce the Temple Mount where it was going to be, every one of the Canaanites would have been trying to bring their idols and offer on that place. You see, the difference between the Canaanites and the Israelites was this. They worship their gods anywhere, everywhere, anywhere they desire. They do it like they want. In their backyard, on a high mountain, or a low mountain, in a field of fruit, whatever. Whatever they felt, they did it. But God says, don't worship me this way. He says, don't worship me like the pagans. Worship me in the place that I tell you to worship. Interesting.
Not just tell, but to choose it.
Chooses, where God chooses the place, which sets in time immemorial something very powerful as to why we now can understand why Judaism is such a very strenuous obligation. Judaism is a strenuous obligation because to worship God is not to do it with a phlegmatic attitude, with a careless attitude in which you do it in the way you desire to do it. You see the difference? The pagans worship their gods any way that they desired to do it. If they wanted to add an extra element, they would add an extra element. If they want to put a little extra pizzazz in their fire, they do it. But no, God says to worship me in a very specific way. Why? Because we are going to understand that the laws that were given to Israel, the obligation given to the Jewish people, and later the mandate that was obviously going to be handed down to the non-Jewish world, we're going to see that these requirements require people to pay attention to the detail. Correct? Why is attention to detail important? You can't worship God without doing it the way He wants you to do it. Can we choose to worship God in the way we want to worship God? No. No. See, that's the difference between the religious world in which most of people that come out of and go into Judaism, that's the world that they're in. That's why there are so many Christian denominations. What? I don't know, 60,000, 40,000, whatever, Christian denominations, because everybody decides they're going to do it their own way. They find a new way to do it. Right off at the beginning, God makes it very clear. Choose. Blessing, curse, mean no mediocrity. Okay? There's no middle road. Now, the average person in the world can be the middle of the road and be an all right guy. You understand? They can be an all right guy. But anyone with any level of integrity and love for the Creator of the universe and love for God is not going to try to find the path of least resistance. They're going to find the more ethical, the more proper, the more succinct way to serve the Creator of the universe. It's looking at the details and paying attention to the details that set you apart from the rest of the world. God immediately says, don't serve me like the pagans, in which they decide how to serve their gods. You're going to serve, make a choice. Either don't serve me or serve me. And which is interesting, because to not do God's will means that you are not serving Him. And if you're not serving Him, means that you are choosing a curse. You see, most people think, well, I'm not doing bad. I'm not robbing banks and pillaging and robbing and maiming and hurting, and I'm not doing all that. But I'm not serving God either, so I'm sort of in the middle. Well, God doesn't see it that way, does He? He sees in the middle making a choice for curse in your life, not blessing. And then we go down and He says, this is how the pagans worship. Don't worship me this way. Worship me in the place that I have designed. Now we'd say, we don't have a Temple Mount. So what does that do for us today? How does that change how we do things today? How would you think that changed the way? We don't have a temple to go to. So how do we worship God? Do we just figure out how to do it on our own and just worship God? No. We have a way prescribed to us.
The oral law has been written down, so you can follow the oral law.
You can follow the oral law, but for the righteous of the nations, they have the Sheva Mitzvot. They have 7 mitzvahs that they can focus on and pay attention to and pay close attention to. And in doing so, can serve God. And not be mediocre and saying that I'm just going to go through life and whatever happens, happens and who cares. But it's a person that really focuses on the right manner. Now, there are a number of things that I wrote down as to why that the reason why it was not named, the place was not named. Absolutely. Right.
But at one time.
At one time.
One place, yeah.
Correct. And each one of them were just as valid as the other. Right. And thanks for bringing it. So the point was, there wasn't just one place. Obviously, wherever the spirit of Hashem, wherever the cloud rested or the fire, that's where they would worship. That was the designated place, which meant that eventually it was at the Temple Mount. Now,
But I was thinking of Shiloh.
yeah, Shiloh, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Bethel, another place.
Bethel, Shiloh, exactly. Right. So Rabbi Isaac Arbanel, in his commentary on Deuteronomy, page 120, emphasized differentiation from idolatry. According to him, all the commandments concerning the temple are given in contrast to the practice of idolatry mentioned earlier to bring out 3 primary differences. Remember, everything that God has asked for the Jewish people to do was to serve Him in stark contrast, opposite of the way the pagans do it. Can you give me a few examples? Not to tattoo yourself. Not to cook a calf in a mother's milk. For the men, not to shave the corners of their beard. Help me out.
Not
There's.
to maim yourself.
Say again?
Not to maim yourself.
Not to maim yourself. Good. Do what?
Not to pluck your hairs or
Yeah, not to pluck your hair out, pull your hair out. Exactly.
Mixing fabrics together.
Mixing fabrics together.
The wool and the cotton shouldn't be mixed.
Right? So you look at all these things, and it's because the pagans do this, we don't do it. So as a general rule, I think that a person who wants to try to be righteous in the world looks around them and goes, this is what evil people do. We need to do the opposite. Whatever it may be. The idea is that what we learn in just these first few verses is that God has a design for us to engage in Him and to engage in our relationship with Him. It's very specific, it's very designed, it's very orderly. And if you want to be able to understand that and plug into it, we have to be able to specifically apply the things that God has asked us to apply to connect to Him. Tom mentioned, well, the presence of God is everywhere in the world. Why is it that it says that God's Shekinah or divine presence is here, is at this place? What's the difference? And the best way that I could explain it to Tom was this, is energy is around us at all times. All times. But if I really want to tap into, or if I want to know where the energy is, I have to go to a socket where it can be connected into, right? For some reason, the divine presence is everywhere in the world. It's in everything in the world. But the very concentrated Shekinah presence of God is going to be in one place, and it's going to be in the third temple. It will be concentrated to a level that people will not have to emotionally engage. It will be there, and there will be no doubt that it's there. It's not going to be a religious fervor. It's going to be a knowing. It's like, as I mentioned to Tom, coming out of the hot air and coming into a cold house. You know the air conditioning's on. You don't have to imagine it. You don't have to get emotionally excited about it. It just is. It's on all the time. In the closing of this short shurim, we want to find the practical application to the text that we've learned today, and that is this. As righteous of the nations who are really striving to contact and connect to God in a very unique and special way, we cannot choose to do it our way. We must choose the way that God has prescribed. God has prescribed this way through the Sheva Mitzvot. He has prescribed it also by the teaching of the sages of Judaism. And the study of Judaism gives us points of meditation, gives us scriptures to study on, gives us the wonderful works of Psalm to read, etc., etc. There are so many ways to connect, but our only proper way to connect is through the Torah, the studying of Torah, and the learning of Torah. How do we then begin to see that energy and divine presence sort of operate in our life? Is when we take Torah and make it into action. When we help others, when we give tzedakah, charity, when we are merciful, when we are kind to other people, we are showing the attributes of the Creator of the universe. That concludes the short shurim, and we're going to get into the discussion of the text. Yes?
I'd like to know